Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022, and today we're going to be taking a look at the state of Ohio. Now, the state of Ohio has definitely gotten a lot of interest from my end when it comes down to the brand new congressional maps that they have put forth, and I have made so many videos about it because Ohio has been in such heavy amounts of litigation that it really determines partisan control. Potentially for the House of Representatives. What happens in Ohio could really change our national environment pretty drastically, and I'll talk about that a bit closer to the end. But one thing that you might notice on 538's redistricting tracker for the nation is that Ohio is filled in, and this gerrymander is very, very apparent. Now, you might be thinking, why is this filled in? Why isn't it stricken down, as we have seen with literally two maps that have already been put forth? And the answer is because the courts have given them exactly until noon tomorrow, meaning about 20 hours from now, we will find out the decision from the courts because they are giving them till 12 p.m. on March 10th to defend their case about this new map. And I'm sure that the commission will put forth the same talking points that Republicans have done time and time again, and that the Supreme Court will ultimately end up shooting down the map again. Now, the Ohio Republican Party has really been so unwilling to give up about this gerrymandered map. It's really unfortunate to see how insane they have really tried to drill in this gerrymander into the state of Ohio. You see, looking at the old congressional map, the Republican Party had 12 seats and the Democrats had 4. Looking at years past before then, the Democrats never really had that super large advantage that they otherwise might have wanted to have in the state of Ohio. I mean, 12-4 is good, but it's nowhere near what it could be right now. And what they are proposing is a 13-2 map, cutting Democratic representation in half and adding an additional Republican seat. Now, it wasn't always like this. In 2008, the Democratic Party held control of the state of Ohio, and in 2010, Republicans were able to win a bunch of those seats, but Democrats still were able to hold more seats than Republicans did, than they did, currently speaking. Democrats in 2010, despite it being a year in which the GOP won 63 seats, the Democratic Party was still able to win 5. Now, in this wave year, Republicans took control, and they gerrymandered the map to a map that is the one that we see here now in 2012, and this is the map that had been stuck through the state of Ohio for the entire decade. And in 2012, the Democrats were only able to win 4 seats here, and the Republicans won 12. Now, keep in mind, in this same exact election, you can see on the House of Representatives level, while Republicans were still able to win the popular vote in the House, Democrats, meaning President Barack Obama, won the presidential election here, and Sherrod Brown won the Senate election. So Democrats were winning statewide, but the state of Ohio did not nearly mimic the 50-46 breakdown in the House of Representatives. In fact, gave Democrats just 25% in terms of total representation. And this map was extremely efficient. It survived what the Supreme Court decreed to be a fair map. It was a decision of 4-3 with Chief Justice O'Connor, who sided with the Democratic Party, saying that this map was unfair. Since then, a Democrat has been elected to the court, a Republican has been kicked out, and consequently, the court cases have been siding away from the Republican Party, whereas they previously did side with the Republican Party. So this map was extremely effective at removing the Democratic Party's competitive nature. Even in 2018, the Democrats weren't able to make any gains. They narrowed down Ohio's 11th, they narrowed down Ohio's 1st, and they narrowed down the 14th district and the 10th district. Then came 2020, and you saw solidifications in the 10th district and also the 14th district. So those weren't really competitive again. The 1st and the 12th returned to being pretty solid Republican seats. In fact, if anything, what we saw was that Tim Ryan's district narrowed down to 7.6%. So main takeaway from this is that the state of Ohio map benefited the Republican Party for the past 10 years and has not seen a single change in its delegation because of this gerrymander. So Republicans wanted to do it again. So they put forth an original map that was stricken down by the Supreme Court. They said that was unfair. That original map you can find right here, which gave Republicans 11 solid seats, 2 additional Republican-leaning toss-up seats, and 2 safe Democratic seats. That pushed forward, and the Supreme Court said no. So what happened was they returned back with an additional 13-2 map. So the Supreme Court said absolutely not. They went to the commission being composed of different members but still Republican controlled, and the commission decided to put forth with this map. Now this map is just as bad as any of the other ones. It's still a 13-2 map. What you're finding is that the 13th district is Republican plus 2, and the 1st district, while being Democrat plus 3, is only the minor improvement for the Democratic Party, which at the end of the day will still result in the Democratic Party only winning 3 seats compared to the original 4 that they have. Now, Ohio is by no means a solid red state. In 2020, the state itself voted for President Trump by a margin of 8.1%. Does a state that voted for Trump by 8.1% really constitute the Republican Party getting 13 out of its 15 seats? I mean, 13 divided by 15 is giving them a percentage of 87% across the state. Does 53% translate to 87%? The answer is no. This Ohio map is a complete insane form of a gerrymander, and it's absolutely upsetting to see that the Republican Party is willing to go to such lengths. And the fact that they are unwilling to give up really is a testament to, their unwillingness to work with the courts. And the courts are going to rule exactly how they have on the past two maps and strike down this map. Looking at this map, what it does is reduce the Democratic Party in one seat, reduces them in another, and pretty much says this is fair. You have Mike DeWine signing it, you have others saying it, and guess what happens now? Because the map itself was drafted by, I believe, someone related to Mike DeWine, because it was, under consideration there is a Republican Supreme Court justice who actually recused themselves from this case, in which there was a decision made by the Chief Justice in which, in this specific case, about this map, in case of the congressional maps, the state legislative maps, the state, every type of map, right? What is being considered now is a 5-2 Democratic advantage, which means that even if there is a 4-3 Democratic advantage, a 5-2 anti-gerrymander advantage, which means that even if a Democrat was to say, you know what, I give up, the primaries are on May 3rd, you do what you want to, you can stay with that map. It has been now at a point where a Republican, a Mike DeWine, I believe his son, recused himself from this case, replaced by a Democrat, meaning that the ruling on this will not necessarily be 4-3, but likely 5-2. 5-2 shooting down this map, which means there is no chance in hell that this map goes through. I could be completely wrong tomorrow, and personally speaking, I don't think I will be. I don't think I will be wrong about that. There seems to be no chance that this map will be stricken down, especially considering that the map and the core delegation is now more pro-Democrat than it was before. So, if anything, the GOP really made a mistake deciding to move forward with this map. They could have at least put forth one that the Democratic Party seemed to have been happy with, and I think that would have been a much better decision for this commission, because the Democrats actually put forth an amended proposal. They took the older map and they decided to put forth a new one. So what does this do? Well, all it does is add an additional Democratic leaning seat, and it keeps Republicans in 7 of the solid GOP seats, in addition to having a Republican lean seat, which means that in a normal year, the Republican Party is winning in most of these seats. The Democrats get 5 seats and the Republicans get 10. That doesn't sound too bad for a state where Republicans are only winning by 8.1%. But the thing is, they decided to reject this. They said no. Democrats were happy with this. They had a 7th district that had a Republican lean, but they thought they would be competitive. They tried to be competitive in the 13th. They reduced a Democrat who was in a previously Democrat plus 16 district into a Democrat plus 1 district. Sure, they turned the 1st district into a Democratic pickup. They turned the 15th into potentially a Democratic pickup, but they kept Republicans nearly everywhere else. And this map would have been a 10-5 delegation in most years. So that wasn't a bad thing for the GOP. While they won't be having a 12-4 delegation, 10-5 is definitely better than what could be proposed. And what could be proposed is something much worse for the GOP. As we saw in the state of North Carolina, because the Republican Party put forth a map that was so insanely a gerrymander, they decided to move forward with a congressional map that was much fairer to the Democratic Party. This is the map that the Republicans put forth for 2022. It gave the Democratic Party 3 seats and Republicans a total number of, 10 seats to 4 in a normal year. Democrats win 4, Republicans win 10. Keep in mind, North Carolina in the 2020 House elections voted for the Democratic Party in the popular vote, and that was partially because there was no Republican nominee in one of the districts. But at the end of the day, what we find is that North Carolina is competitive. North Carolina is close, and Donald Trump only won that state by a margin of 1.3%. So when you have a state that Donald Trump won by 1.3% and you're providing Democrats with a total number of max 4 out of 14 districts, that's insanely unfair. 29% representation in a best year for the Democratic Party is not what should have been put forth. The Republicans tried to solidify their majority even further than what was already a gerrymander. Before the map was declared unfair in 2018, North Carolina had a super extreme gerrymander. In 2016, you saw this map in which Democrats could only win 3 seats. They actually were forced to redraw twice. In 2014, Democrats won 3, and you can just see how insane these gerrymanders were. They were grouping in cities together, Greensboro and other regions of the state, in order to give Democrats, 3 seats, but give Republicans 10. In 2016, they were forced to redraw, and it was another gerrymander. In 2018, they were forced to redraw again, but many of the districts had become competitive, so Republicans were probably happy with that. And then in 2020, Democrats gained 2 seats. But the map itself was still a gerrymander. The new map that had been confirmed by this exact Supreme Court had been a gerrymander, and Republicans were still winning 8 out of the 13 districts, which was 8-5, which isn't the best for the GOP, but it was, still an unfair advantage, and it was one that the courts had approved. Instead of going with a least change proposal, instead of changing the map slightly, adding in an additional Republican district, which I honestly think the courts would have approved, a 9-5 map is much better than an 11-3 map. They decided to go through with an extreme map. And you know what? The courts not only said that that map is unfair, but said for the next 2 years, we are giving you a new map. And that new map that was proposed gives the Democratic Party a total number of 6 seats to the Republican Party's 7. A 7-6 map with one toss-up district that voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. You have a district that voted for Biden, 6 districts that voted for Biden as well, and 7 Trump districts. Think about that for a moment. 7-7 in a state where the Republican Party passed through a map that was 11-3. Now, this map will be gone in 2 years' time, which means whoever is decided on the courts can go ahead and do, if Republicans defeat a Democrat in the 2 court elections that are coming up, they could definitely declare that another map is a fair gerrymander, that it is a fair map for the state of North Carolina. But the problem lies in the fact that this new map that was put forth also invalidates the state legislative maps, which means the state Senate now is going to be fairer. The state House, I believe, is 61, actually a very narrow advantage for President Trump. The main takeaway is that the map in North Carolina on the state legislative level is going to reduce the GOP majority, which decreases the chance of an overwhelmingly large majority and an overwhelmingly huge gerrymander. There's no guarantee that North Carolina ends up with a fair map 2 years' time from now, but it also might prevent the Democratic Party from losing as many House seats as otherwise thought. What this does is reduces a Republican-leaning seat, adds a highly competitive Biden seat, and adds a Democratic-leaning seat, which means Democrats, despite not being in control of North Carolina's legislature, in control of their Senate, in control of anything besides the courts, decided their own map and ended up in that position where they have control over this map. And now the United States Supreme Court says that they will not speak on congressional maps, saying that the state Supreme Court's pretty much is saying that their ruling is going to be the declaration, and it is going to be there. So I am interested to see what happens in the state of Ohio, because we could actually see a similar thing happen, where the Republican Party went to very large extremes, where now the courts are angry, and they're going to put forth a map that isn't like this one, where Republicans are winning, 11 out of the 15 seats here, but instead a more proportional map. What would this map do? It would give Democrats 1, 2, 3, 4 districts in addition to 3 more. Give Democrats 7 districts out of 15. Give Republicans a total number of 8. That is 8-7 in a state where the Republican Party thought Democrats were at most going to get 2. It's an embarrassment to the GOP that this could actually happen, because they actually have a Republican majority. But now, after that appointment, in addition to Justice O'Connor siding with the Democratic Party, the ruling is likely going to strike this down, and they very well could put forth a mandate. Now, the constitutional clarity is a little bit different, because a map needs to pass with bipartisan support in order to be in place for more than just 2 cycles, which means that if this map goes through, the new map that is proportional, one like this, it could very well end up in a position where this map is invalidated in 4 years, but the courts will rule on said invalidation, and if the Democrats still have the majority, there's no guarantee they will actually rule that these maps are invalid and need to be further drawn by the legislature, especially since Republicans are angering the top Chief Justice who was elected as a Republican. I mean, what you are finding is that the Republican Party is truly angering their own people. That's why this map is just viewed as unfair, and that's why a Republican Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Democratic Party. This 13-2 map was strucken down by the Republican court. It was strucken down twice, and now it is going to be strucken down again by an additional leaning Democratic Supreme Court justice. That is specifically for this case. That will not be the case 2 years down the line. Potentially it could be, but there's no guarantee that it will be, and it more than likely will not be. But my main point is, the Republican Party's unwillingness to give up very well can screw them over the same way it did to the North Carolina GOP. They could be put forth, they being the Republican Party in Ohio, could be put forth with a proportional map, where not only did they not get, a 13-2 map, they didn't even get a 12-4 map. They would be getting an 8-7 map. I mean, that is just where you would start to see a lot of people worried. A lot of people, on the GOP side, terrified about their prospects in 2022, because where they were supposed to make the most amount of gains when it came down to gerrymandering and congressional redistricting, you have North Carolina. That didn't happen. In fact, Democrats now make a gain. You have Ohio, where that didn't happen, but in fact, Democrats are more than likely going to make a gain. You have states such as Florida, where the GOP seems to be in a deadlock, where the state legislature could very well overturn Governor Ron DeSantis' veto, and as a result, the congressional maps maintain the status quo. Not an advancement for the GOP, where Louisiana could see a veto from Governor John Bel Edwards, who could very well add a Democratic seat if they decide to follow through. At the worst case, maintaining the status quo. Missouri maintaining the status quo. New Hampshire, a GOP gain, but that's the most for the GOP. All of the states, such as Texas and Georgia, where they thought they were going to get a huge one-up on the Democratic Party, they really did not. And the Democratic Party, however, counteracted with extreme gerrymanders in New York, in Illinois, now in California, in Oregon. Democrats played their cards right, despite being down over 100 seats when it came down to who controls more seats in this process. And now, taking a look at the new maps versus the old maps, the Democrats have already caught up to where they were in the old congressional map. Republicans are about 20 seats away from that point. And that's where the Democratic Party looks at this and says, we are solid. We are good. Not enough to say, absolutely they will win control of the House in 2022, because they probably won't. But enough so that in 24, in 26, and 28, they know that this majority will only continue to expand as the suburbs move further and further away from the GOP unless there's some type of major reversal, that this map will be good for the Democratic Party, and they likely will benefit from many of these new districts, especially with the Supreme Court of Ohio and North Carolina and other states striking down districts, striking down states that otherwise the GOP thought were going to be easy and solid pickups that they did not imagine a year ago would no longer be ruling in their favor. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.